to see you all, and thank you for coming out in the cold. It is interesting for myself coming from 80 to 90-degree weather to 0. 80-degree difference, I tell you. But it's always nice to be home. And thank you all for covering and doing all this great work in my absence and just chipping in. So thank you. Let's do roll call. I guess I've already called it to order. Let's do roll call. You call it or do I call it?
Go ahead.
Okay, well, is Trevor here? Trevor is here. Jessica.
Present.
Yes. Bronwyn, if I'm saying it right.
Yes,
Brandon,
Oh,
what?
Branwyn.
Bronwyn, thank you. Don't see her yet. Kevin,
I'm here.
Khalil,
Yes.
Isabel,
Here.
Mildred.
No.
Yeah,
I saw her. There she is. Yeah.
and Jessica. Yes, thank you. We should, I don't know if it's right to say Jessica 1, Jessica 2.
Oh, she's
Jesse.
Jesse, go by Jesse, hence the name right there. Yeah.
Gets here.
Okay, and then I see Georgina, thank you.
Yeah. Ours one to the.
I've told everybody for the next 6 months, my excuse is sabbatical brain, and I'm sticking to it. So, all right,
Trevor, I should have CC'd you in my response, but Branwyn let me know she'd be a little late. She had an appointment this morning, so she will be here.
all right, fabulous, thanks. Well, we still have quorum, we'll recognize her when she arrives. Let's just, next thing really quick is finalize agenda. I do have an update, but wanted to check to see if anybody else had anything related to the agenda. We may move things, staff come in and out, just FYI. So we're going to be flexible with the agenda, and I think that's okay. One of the things we will be talking about is the position, and we've the hiring team and specifically myself have had some conversations directly with the mayor's office and specifically chief of staff, Katie. And she wanted to come in. We have some things, some questions and some processes we just need to discuss and make sure that we're all on the same page because this is all new. So it was a great conversation. Her schedule allows her to come in around 11. So when she comes, we will finish what business we have and we will add that. We don't need a formal motion to amend the agenda, do we?
It's nice to do that, to add it formally. that it
Okay,
happened.
so I would entertain a motion to add to the agenda, what would we call it? Under new business. Well, we do have
the hiring one.
We do have the hiring, don't we? Where is it? Yeah, she's just going to join us for I don't think we need it.
No,
It's just going to be part of the executive director discussion. We'll just blend it in that way. Does that work for folks?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I ask something?
Please.
Does anyone need a printed agenda?
That'd be nice.
Okay, great. I do
I
that.
thought there was a pile
Yeah,
here.
there was a.
Did I take the
Did you
pile?
take the pile?
I'm on top of the pile.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Sabbatical break.
Yeah.
I think we need to give him like a 3 times deadline.
Yeah.
And it-
Yeah,
No,
appreciate it. Yeah.
I give so many actions.
All right, great. This pushes us ahead of schedule. I love it. That will change, I'm sure. Let's jump to approval of previous meeting minutes. I was not here, so I'll abstain from it, but entertaining a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Jesse. We got a second from Khalil. Any discussion, changes? All in favor, say aye. Anybody opposed, abstain? Trevor will abstain as I wasn't here. And it passes. Perfect. Great.
I meant to vote aye, but it took me a minute to find the mic.
I just took you, Kevin.
Thanks.
And for maybe for logistical purposes, since this is being recorded, if we do thumbs up, is that captured in the recording as well?
For them.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, not on our side, obviously, or it wouldn't be easy. So if thumbs up is easier for you all or thumbs down, you can always do that either live or by reactions. So however you want to do it, whatever's easiest. I just wanted to make sure they could do that.
Hey,
All right.
Trevor.
Yes, ma'am.
Another thing you could do is just say, are there any objections? It's okay to vote by lack of objection if it's something non-controversial. So if that's easier for you, you could do that.
All right. That will save us at least 3 seconds per vote. I love it. It's all about being conservative. Okay. Next is public comment. We do have a person from the public, or you just here to listen? Did you want to speak? We do have availability for that if there was something you wanted to share to the group. Not required.
You want to say something.
Well, please come and sit. We have public comment. You're the only one, so you have about 2-3 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So please, for the record, state your name, any affiliation that we should know, and again, welcome.
Okay. Morning. My name is Olga Robinson, and I've been here in Alaska for the last 32 years. And I'm here as a concerned citizen. I myself know about childcare. I needed it when I was in the military, and when I got out, I was a daycare provider in Germany as well as here in Alaska for a short period of time. And I feel that feel strong that the daycare situation here, either I don't have any, but I have provided it to a couple of my grandchildren that lived here in Alaska, the value. And I sometimes I want to be a little bit. I think that with the military training that I had as a daycare provider was instrumental. Maybe because our group as a family daycare provider, we knew each other. We knew what could happen, maybe what not happening. But the training was going on and on and on. And I felt like I was a part of something super important to the community. And so I feel that this is the momentum I had, or this is what I viewed. I live on the east side, and there's the Walgreens that they shut down next to the Wendy's. And I said, honey, because Beggage Middle School is right next door. And I said, instead of just leaving this to just anybody, why doesn't the city use that as a training center for daycare providers and use it as a daycare, but use it also as a training center? And I mentioned it to a few people, and they're like, yeah, because they live on the east side, they need something there. And my mind just went, well, if I was with little children, if I had little children, if I can work somewhere and I can have the kids with me, sweet deal, sweet deal. It's right next to the schools. I could pick up my kid over there. My kid is with me. We go home. And I'm like, why are there not enough daycare providers? I think there's some, but they're not saying anything because they don't want to follow the rules. Not that they don't want to follow the rules. It's just a lot of paperwork to get there. But that's necessary. And my job that I have now, every year I have to go get my license. 2 days worth it for 365 days. So but also to be acknowledge that I am part of this. I am now still involved with 2 of the girls that I took care of. I want to get choked up. One's an Air Force down in Texas. Another one, she's a major at teaching in West Point. These are little girls. They don't really remember, but their moms told them about me. And that I was just a little part of that. And it's not about the money, because I wasn't making a lot of money. It was that you had these little people you were responsible for. And I think as far as the city, am I going over 2 minutes? I'm probably going over the 2 minutes. Okay.
But you're sweet.
The city, the daycares that I see on the east side, I think they're daycares because there's a lot of equipment, or maybe there's a lot of kids, family kids. Can we do better? Can we do better? We can't. With the money that's coming in from the tax I read about, there's just having a new piece of equipment in your house for your babies is amazing. A little plastic, a stove, a little kitchenette. Kids love it. Little playhouse. love it, you know? And if I had someone that had to come into my house and look at it, make sure I was filling everything okay, bonus. That emphasis is to say, we're doing this because for you, so you can continue doing this, providing the service for the men and women that have to work, not just policemen or firemen or city workers, but everybody across the board. Because I do want to see people out there working, but they have their precious babies. And on the last note, I asked my husband, who also served in the military, he retired. I said, who were your favorite daycare providers? He named a couple, and I said, why? They were just good with the kids. They were sweet. They were sweet. And so that's a huge compliment if you're going to take care of children. So I just here to listen to what the city's going to do with this money. Mine is the training for the daycare providers. We need training, and we should also, if training is required, that we as the city should provide, you know, care for the daycare providers, not just their own from home, but from their businesses too. You know, if they're working at early childhood development place, that they have time to. And why not have a training center where you can bring your babies to there, not pay for it, because they're learning, they're becoming, they want to be good providers. We need to draw in more advertisement. Why do you want to be a daycare provider? Can the city provide some kind of insurance or some kind of benefits? Not just that you're going to get money, but that you're also, you know, maybe you get free parking downtown. Maybe you have an opportunity to go see Beetlejuice, because you are signed up and so it's not just here's your money, you fill out the form so you can get money for food to feed the kids. Because that was not the hardest thing. It was providing something you like, wow, here's Leo, thank you. I think that, you know, you've been running your business for a couple of years. I think we need a break. We're going to send you to where trips. Sabbatical. No, we're going to give you a nice patch. You can go have a nice dinner at see the show. So thank you for listening to me. I will fade out now.
Thank you.
Did members have any quick questions or comments? Well, do stick around. You will hear what we're doing with the money. A little bit of what you're talking about is happening, and really appreciate it. And definitely afterwards, we can also link you to the website. You can read, like we've done a lot of extensive local as well as national research that's really guiding the work that we're doing and how we're implementing it. As much as we think 5 million is a lot on a personal level, when we're looking at the landscape, it actually is not. It's very, very small, and trying to figure out how do you use this small part of dollars to actually impact such a large need. And we've been really working hard on that, and we'll be talking about what's coming down the pike and soon to be happening. So thank you very much for joining us and being so committed. Okay. Is there any unfinished business? I don't have anything listed. Checking in. Hearing none. We will jump into new business. First thing on the list here is just starting to talk about strategic planning and thinking long-term. And wanted to start getting a feel for you all of how we might want to approach this. Again, we have some administration dollars. I see us, we are able to do some stuff. And really thinking about also time. So one of the things that has already occurred, which has been very helpful, is with the work of the implementation team. They kind of outline how initially to use the dollars, some scope of work, as well as some guiding principles, all of that. But now it's our turn as the board is to take all that and start developing what is the 3-year, maybe to a 5-year long-term plan of how best to address childcare in our city. And to me, the long-range plan isn't about how do we use these dollars. The plan is what do we need, and then how do we apply these dollars to that need? And how do we get others? Like For example, we need to be talking about data. What's the data we need to make some of the decisions? I know when the implementation team, Jessica probably remembers as well, and others, was, how many providers actually are there? How many staff? What are the different things? What are the things that we need to know to help predict and determine need and flow, things of that nature, the whole data piece of it. There is just, what are their opportunities? What are the things? Whether it is, like it was shared with us, is a training center needed, or is there a relationship with the university, or with the, like, what are those different things? And what does that long-term goal look like to help us determine not only how to put out our dollars, but on that administration side, how do we uplift, whether it be data, the relationships that are needed, and or research? Jesse's been looking at it. I know ASD is doing more internal, and we've been talking about school closures. Well, what happened if those schools wouldn't have to close and daycare centers filled the other half of the school? What would that look like? What's the research? What's the planning that needs to happen for that? Is that something we want to see? Like those ideas and concepts, we need to create some time for us as a board to be talking about those, and also determining who else do we want in the room to help us make those decisions, if anybody, unless we as a board feel like it's just us, or if it's others. And parts of this will also entail meeting some of the requirements that are outlined in the ordinance that we have to do. This is one of the things that we want to be able to present. So when the assembly's like, and plus the mayor, when we propose the budget, we're not just going, well, we think. No, this is the work that's been done. It's in line with this plan. These are the priorities. So it then also supports it, and people see, and hopefully also see that we're not just whimsically trying to spend money, that we're spending it in a sustainable way to actually grow and strengthen the childcare and early childhood development sector, and not just kind of doing some money and then walking away from it. So wanted to see from you all, when you think about long-range strategic planning, what would you like to see? Not in the sense of the topic, but what does that process look like for you? And what would you need to be able to do this? And I'm hoping for this to be kind of spring to beginning of summer. But that's just my thought. So I just kind of wanted to lay the foundation and really open it up to you all just to get feedback. And then we can decide, how do we want to move this forward? Do we want a committee to be working on this? How do we want to get ourselves in that position? So with that, thoughts, comments?
I have a lot of thoughts and comments.
Please, Jesse.
I do not want to take the whole floor, but we at AFG have been thinking a lot about this in our open spaces, as Trevor mentioned. We do have schools that have empty classrooms. I've been thinking about how we can work together with the community with my half-day preschools and make full day care at a subsidized rate. But then also keeping in mind what that might do to the 0 to 3 childcare, because the 4-year-olds offset the infant tuition. We've also started our relationships with the university and the military. So encouraging growth there. The military has the CDCs, but they're struggling to keep up with the needs. So they're often reaching out to us for continued training. They're struggling to retain employees. So with the option of building in community childcare centers, we could contract with a center to rent at a very low cost ASD facilities. It would lower their overhead, right? It would have the building custodian, the building's already paid for in a sense. Figuring out how we can offer free and reduced on a scale childcare for those who work in the childcare facility and then those who work in the school. And it would be at like in ASD, I think of our unions. So we have Totem, ACE, and then AEA. Totem is our like paraprofessionals, our kindergarten paras, and our front office employees. And those are typically the lowest paid employees, and they're hard to retain because it's really expensive to have childcare when childcare takes up your entire paycheck, right? So having like a scale.
Just because of time,
Yeah.
you're getting a little more in like
Yeah,
what we
so-
could talk about. I want us to be thinking about if we did strategic planning, what would you want it to look like?
Okay.
Like, is it a 1-day thing? Do we need to have a 2-day thing? Do we need a facilitator? What information might we need? And this is just the beginning of it. So I want us to be that high level,
Okay.
but those are the things that we'll want to bring into the room.
So I guess I think that it's more than a 1-day thing, if you just want, because I could go on.
Well, really quick, well, we can do a survey. We will figure out like,
Mhm.
can people do a full day? Do they need to be half days? Do we look at a weekend because we're more open? So we'll do a survey around that, but it looks like at least 1 to 2 days, and there might be some follow-up. Other thoughts?
I think, there's a lot of good work that was done in the implementation team, and we haven't spent a lot of time going through those documents. So there might be some just learning, coming together, maybe having outside experts from some groups like ASD or from
Right.
licensing.
Providers.
From providers, having some people educate us so that we can talk about strategic direction and. But I would see it as probably 2 days.
Yeah, I think having those sessions like show us the data that you've already collected or that needs to be collected. And then what the community has to say, whether they send in letters or they come in and talk to us. And then about the ideas that we have to address those needs that we just learned about
Mhm.
through data and opinions. And I do agree that it might be like a 2-day kind of thing. Maybe we split into half days. I don't know how that would work, but I agree.
Like a preemptively, we send to community partners, like universities, or the university, maybe ASG, military providers, Thread, to bring those ideas. That way you're thinking like send out and then they bring it or send it in for us to review.
But I mean, just to clarify on that, wasn't there a pretty large public comment process? So I mean, that's compiled, I know, through the results. So I mean, in a way, that's good background that we could start with
Mhm.
to what
Yeah.
Jessica was saying. So
Yeah.
I don't know if we'd want to, it seems like we'd want to start with that before asking for them to do that process over again, right?
Yeah, that's what I meant about reviewing the data we already have.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Like that was already collected.
From the IT.
Like the white paper.
Mhm. And that survey we could do. And I know Austin did a little bit at the beginning for us, but
They're short.
it was short, but also it's the fire hose, right? So there might be some dedication and time and learning and working within that agenda. We might do some pre-work. Folks online, I want to make sure there's space for you. Your thoughts around this?
Yes,
Oh.
I totally agree. I'm sorry, Kevin.
No, Mildred, after you, sorry.
Okay, I totally agree with Jessica. I don't, oh, yeah, it's two Jessicas. Okay, Jessica Simonson. I hope I said your name right. But yes, looking at what we have already, the data that has already been collected with the implementation team, I think if we really dive a little bit deeper into those documents and those results, then that would kind of give us a pathway of the strategic planning. And also, of course, you know that I do work at Threads. So another thing that I could do is also collect some data from like our family supports team about some trends that they're hearing from the providers that are calling in, from our professional development specialists as well. What are some things that you guys are seeing in the field? What are you hearing? And then also bring that back to the group as well, because those that are in those programs and communicating with the providers, they really gives us a clear sense of what's happening in the program. So I could also bring that back as well.
Great. Kevin?
So I would just say, I think it sounds like we're all on the same page that we want to do something effective and not forget all the work that's come before us, that we want to dive into that and understand those numbers. So I would also suggest, in addition to bringing in like ASD and the university, there's researchers at the Institute of Social and Economic Research who did a recent market rate study. McKinley Research Group also did a cost of care study that they've shared with the governor's task force, and I think also the implementation team for the ACE. And so maybe diving into some of those reports can help inform us when we think about strategically, like how do we most want to effectively spend these tax dollars to improve people's lives and do what we're supposed to be doing, right? And so I think, to me, a day or two, maybe 2 half days makes a lot of sense because a lot of work has come before. But I think in the long run, yeah, taking that time now will save us a lot of trouble down the road because we won't have to duplicate stuff that's already happened.
Right. Any other comments?
I like the 2.5 day structure, and then maybe if we like take time to review the McKinley research. I know I haven't seen that one in the ICER research beforehand, and then that can inform some of the starting points, and then we can determine what outstanding information we might need or if there are any gaps.
Yeah, is there a way to get that all in one location so that we can?
Yeah, there might be, and probably strategically thinking about, because giving us more homework and reading, what does that all look like? And is it us reading it? Is there a way of summarizing it? How best to move it forward? I do want to create, Austin, you've been part of this group for 1.5 years. You've also been thinking about this. I want to create any space for you to also share. I always want to make sure staff have that space.
Sure. Thanks, Trevor. Yeah, those are all great points, and I agree with everything you all are saying. We have a resources tab on the ACE Fund website that has a lot of these things, although I don't know if the cost of care study made it because that was more recent than some of the other things on the resources page. So, but I'm also happy to create a Google Drive or do something that's useful for you all. If you determine what things you'd like to review in advance, we can make sure that that's made easy for you. And then I just wanted to point out a couple things. So the implementation team, Trevor alluded to it, but created a goals, guiding principles, and approach document that was pretty detailed about what they felt the goals and principles of the fund should be and how to make funding determinations. And they asked that you all consider it and either formally approve it, or make changes to it and then approve something like that. So I think that one thing you could plan to do is consider that as a basis to kind of start your discussion around your goals and guiding principles, and work on that in the strategic planning events, 2 half days, whatever it is. And then in terms of timing, I shared this with Trevor and Jessica, but you all will have to turn in by September 2nd, your 2026 proposed budget to the mayor's office and assembly. You'll need to have a public hearing on that budget. So before it's finalized. So presumably that would be the August meeting, which is August 7th. You also need to have one other public hearing to collect ideas before you put together that budget. So I think, that could be sort of springtime. Then maybe you have this strategic planning session. You're also required to put together, and I know this is a lot, but I'm just sort of throwing it out there, and I can put it in written form if that's helpful, like I did for Trevor and Jessica, but some sort of investment strategy. So I see it as a bunch of ideas, start reviewing things, hear from the public, look at what's already out there, put together an investment strategy that informs your budget, which really needs to be created in July. So once you start doing that, start realizing that probably the earlier, the better. I would try to do in April or May, no later than that, your session. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, Austin. Well, and this is going to be to be honest, we're going to have 2 things going at the same time. I don't think our strategic plan will necessarily impact what we propose in the budget, because this is going to be a lot of work. And I don't know if we're going to have it. But I think as we put the plan together, or the budget, it will influence our plan. They're going to be kind of working side by side, because normally what you would want is the strategic plan and then create your budget. I don't think we're going to be able to get all that done. If we do, wow. But it's February, we meet once a month. It's going to be a lot, especially as also thinking we're getting all the current dollars out. We're trying to hire the executive director. So we kind of have to live in a little bit of limbo and recognize there's only so much we can do. And we're already doing a lot. And what does that look like? And I just share that just as for expectations purposes, but we still have certain mandates we have to do. And one of my plans is, now that I'm back, was actually kind of work out, and Austin's done a lot with like her schedule, but us as a board schedule of what we need to be doing at which meetings, and really kind of backdate and figure that kind of stuff out. And I'll work with Austin on that and have a good calendar and be sharing that out. And as I say all this, one of the things I'm thinking is, would love and us to formally determine it is, I don't think anybody in this room has time to manage, lead, write, and develop a strategic plan for us. Austin does not. Even a full-time ED would not, with everything going on. And I think that we want an outside facilitator for sure, because we want all people that are close, including staff, to be freely able to participate. So they're not bogged down of trying to do notes, but they can really be a part of. And then they will be responsible for putting this all together for us while we're trying to work on these other things. So I would love, and we don't have a price tag. I have to figure out what that process would be like. We'll probably need to talk to Nolan. I don't know how we do that because it's not in the current budget, and I don't know how that works. But would love, I don't know if we need a motion, but I would love to just hear from the board, at least a consent of approval to work with Nolan and Austin in getting out and identifying. I don't know if we have to do an RFP. I don't know anything yet, and I wish Nolan was here, but he is out enjoying his time off, which is great, but follow up to figure that piece out. Would we all be in agreement that we need to bring in a contractor to support this work? Or would you think something different? I take thumbs up, thumbs down, head nods. Yeah. Okay. I will follow up with Nolan when he gets back. I'll work with Austin on doing that and exploring what do we need to do. If we have to do an RFP, or can we do a sole source? If we can do a sole source, then we'll explore who that could be, reach out to you all. We've all had different experiences with different folks. So you may recommend and us exploring, and then hopefully by March meeting, we'll have this worked out and we can make a decision on how to move that forward. Does that sound good to everybody? Okay, great. All right. Let's go down to communications regarding the new ACCE fund programs. Austin, do you want to kick that off?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Thanks.
We moved the agenda around a little bit to accommodate Katie coming, and also the attorney can be here at 11. And so anyway, this is a little out of place because I haven't given you an update yet around.
Just so you know, the lawyer's here.
Oh, great.
Hi, yes, I know.
The third Jessica.
Jessica.
You don't like being called the lawyer?
I did.
Oh, we're expecting somebody else? Maybe?
But Jessica will be here.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
And I'm sorry, I'm saying lawyer because I cannot remember your names. Thank you. Oh, another.
It's hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, Austin.
No, that's okay. So thank you for letting me know that Jess is here. So the timeline is that Tamaya and I will talk a little bit about this a little bit later, but we have the evaluation committee met on the first two RFPs. Those have selections have not been made public or approved by the assembly, so we can't share them here, but we've made great progress and we hope to have the contractors on board in by the end of the month. and beginning to implement the programs, the childcare subsidies and stimulus payments at the beginning of March. So very exciting. And I think one question that when I was meeting with Trevor and Jessica was, how do we want to work to get the word out on these programs? And I think there's some different times that we could consider making a big communications push. One could be just talking about having the contractors on board, and we're excited to move forward with this funding process. But really, the public probably won't see the details around those programs until an application is created by those contractors and put out into the public sphere. So I think it could be a little confusing if we focus too much on we have someone, we're doing it. So I think my recommendation, but wanted to get feedback from you all, is I think we should get the contractors on board in March and then start working with them around what their plan is for communications within the RFPs. We ask them to please collaborate with different organizations in the sector and to spread the word in the community about these programs. So I think they'll be working on that, and then we can work in concert with them. But I think that, you know, whenever that is, this question still remains of what we want to do. And there's a lot of different ideas. And hoping to just hear from you guys. I'll run through a couple first. So I did reach out to Dawn Skeet, who is the municipal childcare licensing person, and she said she'd be happy to reach out by email to all of the license providers in Anchorage to let them know about our programs. For the stimulus payments, they would directly probably be interested in applying. For the childcare subsidies, they could let all of their employees know that this new program is coming online. So I think that would be a really good, and maybe that was Jessica's idea, I can't remember, way to spread the word. I could certainly post on our website. And Dawn mentioned that they could put on the AHD website a notice about that as well. I reached out to Anchored City. It's a local podcast that Jessica and Trevor and I have done a couple episodes between the three of us, and some IT members before that did as well. So we've been doing this series talking about the rollout of the ACE Fund. I think we could potentially do another podcast and share that out. And I could draft another op-ed if that's something you'd like to see, if you think that would be effective. Trevor brought up the idea of doing a press release around the programs. And I think it would be nice if the application is out to link to the application so that folks could just jump right to it and get started. And I think then there's a question around who's doing that press release. Is it the board itself? Is it a joint release from the assembly and the mayor's office, since this is a municipally funded program that they've both supported? Is it from the contractors and they're sharing, hey, we are running this municipal program and here's some quotes from the board that funded it, or from the assembly? So I think there's some different ways to do that, and we don't have to know all the answers now. But and then of course we should involve partners, you know, ACT, Thread, other organizations, CCAP, the state child care office. Anyway, I'll stop for now, but I guess feedback first on if you think it makes sense till an application's out to do that big push, and then ideas specifically on how to do it. And I'm going to be taking notes.
Thoughts, feedback for Austin?
Yeah, I think it's more practical as a communication strategy to do the big communications push after the applications are out. That way it's fresh and people will kind of get going if they're interested. Otherwise, we probably have to do 2 communications pushes.
So what we could do is look at it in 2 pieces. One is just an update of what's happening of the fund. I think that's important. We've been trying to do that. We did that with the IT implementation team of always just letting people know, which could be maybe an op-ed or just putting something out. It's very simple and easy. Something on the website, so if people are asking, they can just know. And then the second is the big splurge, because when we're putting all that energy in, it's to lead to something, which is the application, whether one is to fund individuals who are childcare workers and have children that they can get a stipend to cover their children if they're a worker, and then direct support for providers. So we want Because as soon as we share anything gigantic, people are gonna go, well, how do we get to that money? And they'll feel let down if they don't have that application. So it's more of I think there's an update which can be about the money, what's going on with the board, what to expect. And then the big push, which would be, we'll have a timeline when the providers are identified or the contractors are identified, and working with each one of them on their timeline and seeing how they merge.
I think the last op-ed did kind of a good job at giving a update to the public about what is happening with the funds. So I do agree with Khalil that maybe just doing something once we have the application might be good enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't looked at that op-ed, so thank you for that feedback.
Yeah.
So if we feel like the public kind of knows, or we've provided that at this point update, then we probably just wait till we actually have something to really release on a bigger scale. Austin, do you have what you need?
Yep, I think this sounds great, and I think I'm comfortable with sort of who we can collaborate with and how to get the word out. I guess one thing I could think with Trevor and Jessica as we get closer is just if we do issue a press release, sort of who is most appropriate to do that. But I think that's something we could figure out in a smaller group.
Yeah,
I think it would be nice to have something that's in a video format, I don't think we've done something like that.
Yeah.
I like ACT's little videos that they do around, giving and the holidays. And I just think like some people might not want to read something. They might want to see just a little video.
yeah.
Are you
And
saying, Jessica, like people individually record things that we put on our website, or what do you mean a video? Just so I understand.
Well, if we're doing an announcement, it could just be an audio, video announcement and like a little congratulations, whatever we wanted to say in the op-ed, but we could put a video on our website.
Well, again, this getting more in detail, but we could actually do a press conference, video that, and definitely we'd want the mayor's office present, any assembly member who would like to join, the contractors, and it might be also helpful, like from the perspective of if we could have, because of the two programs, have a provider, and maybe it's one from the board that could speak to why this money will be helpful to them, and then maybe a staff person and why that has children, this type of stipend, and really connect and make the stories real. So I think there's some opportunity. We probably won't be there until what we're thinking this money hopefully hits the street by May, June. Is that correct, Austin?
I think in one of the proposals that we received recommended March through May design of, just as an example, March through May design of application. I think part of the challenge is that they might need to wait until they close an application period to fully evaluate. Any contractor might need to fully evaluate eligibility criteria and how to design the formula depending on what applications and how many they get. So it might be that, if that closes in April or May, then they're working on the formula, money might not get out until July.
Okay, but really, so we're looking at kind of that summertime.
Yeah.
But it's moving rapid. For a governmental system, we're really moving fast. Which is great. To be honest, I've seen it a lot slower. Usually this process takes 9 to 12 months. And we are really, and all people involved, which includes the municipality folks, are actively engaged in making this happen, which is greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I was going to say, Trevor, that comes down to Trevor last summer saying, okay, how do we start talking about implementation? And everyone's like, what? We don't even have a budget yet. He said, no, we need to be ready to do it before we even have the budget. So that's why this is happening. And also Tamaya from AHD, who has been guiding me through this process. I would have had no idea how to draft all of these and work through the process. And she's here today. Yeah, she's here today. And she's just been jumping in and doing it. I mean, taking it on top of the rest of her workload. So she deserves a big thanks.
Oh. This is awesome. I recognize that public doesn't always see us moving fast, but within this system, we truly are. So, and fast doesn't mean things are being missed. It's just the good diligence. So thank you to all that have been helping with that. All right. Implementation of the ACE Fund programs. Austin, it's back to you to go through those. Katie's not here yet, so let's just keep going through the agenda.
Okay, great. And I already
Yes.
shared, I already shared a little bit of what's happened, but Tamaya might want to share more about next steps. But the evaluation committee did meet and made an initial recommendation. Tamaya, do you want to take it from there since you'll use the correct words?
Yeah, happy to do that. Sorry, I'm very backlit in my office today. So the evaluation committee met. Apologies as I try to get this camera to stay in place. Okay. You're gonna have to see this part of my head. I don't know. So the evaluation committee met, scored the proposals, and we are moving through the next steps of the process. So the first step is to negotiate. This is basically when we work with the proposers that were chosen to finalize their contracts. And then once we have the contracts finalized, we put a recommendation of award to the purchasing office, who then puts AMs forward to the assembly. So right now we are working towards trying to have them on the assembly agenda on February 25th. I think that we probably will definitely make that timeline for one of the proposals. We might not make that for the other one, but we can also request for that to go on the addendum. We have a little bit more time to make the addendum than we do the regular agenda, but I think either way, we will definitely have these in front of the assembly and then hopefully approved by the first assembly meeting in March. And then once they're approved by the assembly, we just have to basically route the contracts to get them executed, and then the work can begin. And really once it's public who we're proposing to award, then, people can start from this group can start meeting with those contractors, but we do encourage them not to do any, serious work until they have their executed contract in hand. So we should be pretty good to get that work starting in March and move from there.
When's the first meeting? Is it the first Tuesday or the second Tuesday that they meet? The assembly? Every Tuesday.
It depends. Usually it's the first, but I think you said March 5th, Tamaya.
I'm not sure. So
It
this
would be the
month,
4th.
yeah, this month the meetings are on the 11th and the 25th.
So,
Let me
and
see
how
what-
long do contracts take? Like, the likelihood of the assembly not approving these, will the contracts be ready? So by the 12th, they're sent to the selected people? Because again, I'm just thinking timing. If it's another week, if they were saying March to May was planning time for them as
Mhm.
contractors, that's now really shifting it to April through June. So we've lost a month. So I'm
Yeah.
just,
So basically what happens once the assembly approves it is we just have to wait for the fully signed assembly document, which is something that the clerk works with the chair to get done. And they've been getting them done very quickly. And then the purchasing department routes the contract for signature. So it usually happens in the same week that the assembly approves the item.
okay. All right, fingers crossed on all that. That puts us mid-month. Okay, we'll monitor. Again, I recognize this is all moving quickly and really appreciate that. So
Yeah.
it's going to be that pusher.
Yeah, it does look like the first assembly meeting in March is March 4th. So, we have hopefully
Yeah.
February 25th. We'll hopefully make that, but I think we will for sure make March 4th. And we might have one that makes one meeting and the other that makes the next meeting.
Okay. Great. Any questions at this point? Otherwise, I want to pause the conversation if that works for you, Austin. And because Katie was able to has entered the room, and I want to respect her time. I know it's really full. Hearing none, we'll put this on pause and we're going to jump into the executive director discussion. We have been joined by Chief of Staff Katie. I don't know if, have you met folks yet, Katie? I know we know each other.
Most, maybe not all.
All?
Yeah.
Let's quickly just do introductions so Katie knows who's on the board and in the room. Katie already knows me. Let's start over here and then we'll go online.
Hi, Khalil Whippen.
Jessica Simonson.
Regina Brooks. Jesse Nessett.
Mildred, introduce yourself.
Hello, Katie, Mildred Parker.
Kevin.
I'm Kevin Barry. Nice to meet you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Katie, for joining us. So the hiring committee has been working with Austin and Nolan and starting to work out all these things. I believe you're all in, well, I don't 100% know where you're all at with everything, so I may repeat some things. So from the hiring committee standpoint, the job description has been reviewed, finalized, and is in process. If Nolan was here, we'd start talking about kind of what is that process. We started looking at like, oh, do we need a hiring, a recruiter? What does that look like? Are we doing that internal? Austin was getting us quotes on, not quotes, but approximately cost, things of that nature. And then we're also started just looking at like, what is that process? So in the ordinance, it says what's the formal word? We consult with the mayor. Is that the formal word?
Consultation.
Consultation, the fancy word, thank you, consultation with the mayor. What does that mean? There's no specific definition. It doesn't mean that we just go in and go, hey, this is who we want. You just need to nod your head. But it also doesn't mean the mayor just selects who they want. And we're all kind of in this kind of a new language and process and figuring out what that looks like. Katie and I had a conversation last night, and that's why she's joining us. It's just starting to think about what does that look like and what does the overall process, as well as where does this position lie and how does it intersect with the administration and that whole piece. And Katie wanted some time just to share what her thoughts were, but also maybe present something that allows us to start having a conversation and going from there and keeping this moving forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Katie, and thank you again.
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. I'm Katie in the mayor's office. We have Eva Gardner here, municipal attorney, in part because we're going to look at a little bit of code. So bringing people who spend a lot of time in the code, more than I do. I think that's right, Trevor, in terms of landing, or I think a most immediate question is around the hiring process. But I was thinking we could do a little bit of a step back and just talk about the ways in which this sort of the ACE fund, the board, the executive director, and the municipality and how those interact. And from my understanding, this is pretty unique. There are things similar to it in code, but nothing exactly like it in code. So we're kind of all in new terrain together and thought we could just walk through, don't have to read every line of code that's up here, but I was just using this to pull out some places where we do intersect with the board and with the fund, raise some questions, ideas, just so we can have an open conversation about how we work together. And some of that is explicitly written into code, and then some of that is just more practically, we sort of need to work together. And my take is the more we're able to collaborate and be aligned, the smoother these intersection points are. So yeah, I was thinking we could just scroll through a couple of those and discuss and ask questions, take questions. Oh, sure. The first part of the section that I pulled is really about kind of the uses, kind of allowable uses for the fund itself. And I think we're all pretty familiar with this. The budget was crafted with these in mind. I guess mostly putting this up just to say, to me, there is alignment on uses, especially as we think about going into a budget process, the more smooth that is. I do have a question to kind of pose, or for all of us to think about going forward, which is this piece around the word prioritize in that last for there. So prioritize the utilization of existing school district facilities that are closed. I know this is something the mayor has talked a lot about. In reading that, I had the thought that having the mayor come to one of the upcoming meetings, especially as you all are starting to chart out or think about the budget process for next year, could be great because she can share some of how she's thinking about these uses and priorities. You all can talk about how you're thinking about uses and priorities. There's a section on the budget later down, but for me, that's really about ultimately you all present and propose a budget. The mayor then gets that. The mayor can say, oh, this looks great. I'm going to send it to the assembly. The mayor could, and I'm not saying this is what she will do, could totally rewrite that budget and say, actually, never mind, here's a totally different budget. And so to me, the more there's alignment on, hey, what are we trying to do before that process even starts, the more we avoid a situation of, wait a second, this doesn't look at all like the budget we put forward. And so just wanting to highlight on this first piece, the more that there's clarity on kind of what are we trying to do with the fund? What are you all seeing as the uses and how is she thinking about that? And then how are we bringing in assembly perspectives as well? Because that's a third place where the budget could totally change. So that's all to say, I think the more we talk openly about kind of the big picture, where are we trying to get to and how are we wanting to use the fund, the better. And then the specific idea that having the mayor come and talk about how she's thinking about this, in part because when she was on the assembly, she helped kind of make it happen. So she has thoughts and ideas about how the funds get spent. Any questions or thoughts related to that one? Makes sense. Cool. Thanks for letting me put way too much text on the screen. I think B is pretty familiar, but it's basically the process by which the assembly establishes the board's composition, the responsibilities. The mayor then appoints board members. So I think you're all familiar with that. That's how you are here. The assembly then confirms board members. And there's a piece in here that the board advises the assembly administration. So I also think about that piece in the context of the mayor coming to talk about kind of her priorities and how she's thinking about it, but also the idea that this board is meant to be a resource, a group of experts who can advise the administration and the assembly, both on the use of the fund, but just on childcare and early education more broadly. So another point where we connect, our team, she went through all the applications that came in, made the decisions about who's in this room. And that will flow into some of the other things we talk about. The third piece is around the budget and funding. And I already kind of spoke to this, but to me, this really just highlights this more conversation, more alignment. The less the budget gets upended once and then twice and then a third time and ends up as a Frankenstein that no one recognizes, the better. And so I know this first budget process happened slightly differently because of the timing and cadence of when it needed to get out the door. And I think we have kind of our first shot at the real full budget process with the board in place. And I know Austin and Trevor and everyone in this room have been thinking about how we kind of set ourselves up for success on that front. I think the two I really wanted to talk a little bit more specifically about are these next two. So one is the section's called expenditures and administrative limit. Obviously, the municipality collects and administers the tax itself, and that's written into the ACE fund budget. So there are funds attached to that. There's a second piece around administering the fund and the grants and contracts piece that has already created some questions and things that we need to answer, particularly on our end, but also affects how the board and the fund intersect with the municipality. So I know we have folks from the health department on and connecting around how do we get RFPs out. When it's come to Austin's contract, for example, the mayor's office has been administering that. If and as there's an executive director, there's a question of that position has to live somewhere in our org chart, both like we just have to do that for how our systems, to not have our systems break, but also practically like who's doing approvals, where are those contracts originating, coming out of? So there are some really, in some ways, like nitty gritty practical questions, but actually do really influence what is the interface between this board and this fund and municipal staff. And we still have some open questions on that front. We don't actually have the, where does this position live? You're working with some departments on some pieces, some departments on other pieces. I think the more that there's clarity and streamlining around that, the better. There are also questions about, I don't know, that raises questions for me about cost and staff time. And this is different because it's a fund separate from the municipality, but it could, end up being a significant amount of work over time to manage those contracts. You know, folks at the health department are already doing that work. And so I guess I put all of this in the bucket of still some open-ended questions that some of that's for us to resolve and come back with recommendations on, but also I think is important for you all. To know that this is just different than other things that we have, and that the more you can see into that, I think the better for understanding who are we connecting with on what, where does this ultimately report up to, kind of who are the decision makers, all of that. Does that make sense? Or any questions related to that one?
Many of the questions we've had as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then the last piece that is what you just referenced, Trevor, as there have been conversations about hiring process and bringing on an ED or an executive officer. It's written into code that the board may, but is not required to, appoint a principal executive officer. And then it has that kind of key phrase, at least for how we're thinking about it, in consultation with the mayor. That person then serves at the pleasure of the board. So we have this kind of process where the mayor appoints the board members can appoint an executive officer. That executive officer is a municipal employee. So there's a piece there. And then that position is appointed by the board, but in consultation with the mayor. And I have Eva and Jessica here in part because in consultation with does have.
Oh, I got it.
And then serves at the pleasure of the board.
And serves at the pleasure of the board.
So at the will of the board.
Yeah, so there's a piece around, I think that's right. So it's, I think just having clarity on, you know, mayor appoints board members, assembly approves board members. The board can then appoint an executive officer that needs to be done in consultation with the mayor. That person is then hired as a municipal employee and then does serve at the pleasure of the board and sort of report to the board. But because they're a municipal employee, they have to live somewhere in our org chart. So that's where you get some of the kind of different ways that this position is in some ways separate from, but in some way really closely intersects with the municipality. And the one piece I wanted to try and zero in on as you all are actively thinking about the hiring process is what can we do to better define in consultation with the mayor? And I'm going to turn it over to our code interpreters to try and give a little color to that.
Yeah, and the in consultation, Eva Gardner, municipal attorney, and I have Jessica Willoughby from my office, who's also an attorney. So the in consultation language is a little bit unique in municipal code as part of a hiring process. It appears many other times in other contexts, but the way I think legally where we've landed on what it means is there's a range. At one end, you have the bookend, you have notification, right? A lot of things in code require you notify somebody like pretty after something has happened or that something is going to happen, you notify them, then theoretically they have a chance to object, air their displeasure. Or there's approval, right? With the approval of the mayor or somebody else, and approval, you know, you need that sign off before that person can be hired. Consultation is somewhere in the middle. And looking at code, the most frequent use of in consultation with is actually in regard to my office. It says you can do this in consultation with the municipal attorney, in consultation with the municipal attorney. And if you think about what it means to consult with your attorney, it's not notifying them. It's not just telling them and talking to them, but it's giving them an opportunity to consider the situation and give you their informed opinion, give you their informed advice about what you're doing so you can take that into account and consider it as you make your decision. And that's how we're interpreting consultation here as engaging the mayor, giving the mayor an opportunity, to weigh in and then considering the mayor's advice in good faith as part of your hiring decision. So that's our interpretation here. And it's not, formalized that there's no form for it or anything that we have ready, but it might be good. You could create a policy potentially that kind of in conjunction with the mayor's office that would articulate what it means to hire in consultation with the mayor for this body so that the next time this comes around, you don't have to go through this process again.
We've talked a little bit about, maybe for practically what that means. I think it would be really helpful for us to understand sort of what is the process, what is the information that will be available in that process. So my understanding from talking just a little bit with Eva is that if and as you all have here are the applicants, here are their resumes, the mayor having access to information is a piece of that consultation part. And then having some ability to input or provide her kind of advice or thoughts on the decision being made. And so to me, those are three kind of buckets of identifying and being able to kind of articulate and align around what is the process, how is this going to go, that we have clarity on that, having the access to information as you all have it, and then having an ability to weigh in before a decision is made. Did I say anything that would concern either of you?
Yeah. That's right. And
Consult the lawyer.
Yeah, I'm gonna, in consultation
Same,
with
yeah.
the municipal attorney.
And looking at the other portions of code that Katie went through and looking at, charter, at the language that we have, it does contemplate, right, this is a partnership. This is, you are all here because you want to help do this work in the municipality for the municipality. You're all appointed by the mayor at the beginning and confirmed by the assembly. And so it just does, I think this approach is, true to both the letter and the spirit of what this board is intended to do.
Maybe one other quick thought is just that,
I was going to, and if it's related to this, add it, or I was just going to open it up. There was a lot been shared just to see if board members had any questions on clarity, making sure that we're all on the same page. So I just wanted to create that space as well. So looking.
Did you want to add something before we?
oh, just to say, the one thing that I've also been thinking about is this is obviously there is sort of a hybrid. It's different from some of the other things that we have in code, but having a process, so that can be something that you all are generating, but having clarity and just having an articulated process feels really important. This is, these are tax collected dollars. This is a big kind of community issue, big public concern. I just, that to me, I think I just want to add that as something that feels really important to us and really important to the mayor, knowing that you all have an ability to kind of guide and define that, but feels really important that there is a process. And I guess wanting to just say that we are pro public process people is the last thing I was going to say.
Great. Questions, comments, clarity that's needed.
I guess I have a question regarding that is, it says the board can appoint, but it doesn't say we need to have the process of interviewing and collecting resumes and how many and all that. But you're suggesting that we do go through that and open, like, thinking of a very standardized process of an institution I work for, right? Like, it's open for 10 days, we collect X amount of applications, review, yada, yada. Like, even though we can just appoint.
Yeah, it doesn't say hire. It says
Point, right?
Yeah, maybe that's some of I think that's, to me, that's part, I guess a couple of thoughts on that. There's one piece of what is explicitly in code, what is required. There's a piece around practically kind of needing to work together. So I think some of the flavor of this is like, I do think that having a process and having a clear way the mayor inputs, like all of those things help us get to a point where you all have an executive officer who is the person you want to hire. And also we have a collaborative relationship that then from there we go and do the budget, we implement, there's good alignment there. And then this is something that voters voted on, they approved. I think folks are really interested in what happens with this and care a lot about what happens with it. And this is not me imposing this. I think it's a way I think about it, which is that having a process, I think, is part of sort of the having kind of public confidence and trust in what we're all doing with this fund. So maybe that's more editorializing in ways that we think about it than what's explicitly in code, but
the way we define the process and do it this time doesn't live in code and doesn't necessarily have to be the way it was in the future if it was to come up again, right?
And that's it. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I read, and again, like, it might be a good idea to have a policy and practice on how you go about your hiring process, just for the benefit of future boards and to ensure, right, just nice to have policies, what to do. But, what you do now is not going to be written into code unless the assembly chooses to write it into code.
Sure.
However, one of the things to answer that, what I always see as policy is we have it written down. The board could discuss it So if something happens in 5 years, we have to go through it, review it, see if there's any changes, but just can't throw it out. So it ensures not just continuity, but an open and transparent process. And they don't have to start over again. And hopefully it doesn't allow I always think about worst case scenario, that someone comes in and they really want to have a certain person in because they want to totally change everything that's been done over the past 5 years. It puts some roadblocks in a process. So thinking of that way, I saw a hand.
Okay, so just to preface this, I'm new to municipal boards, but I want to see if I can clarify what you were explaining, like in your initial presentation. I mean, it sounds like what you're saying, I mean, we had planned or hoped to bring a recommendation forward to the mayor's office, which I believe Trevor was planning to do. And then give the mayor's office an opportunity to weigh in, then we would take that into consideration. So I mean, is that my understanding of like what we had planned to do is that that is consultation, but are you saying that consultation is something different than the opportunity to weigh in and be considered in our process?
I'd like you take a first pass at the consultation part.
Sure. I mean, I think consultation doesn't have a strict definition. And
Right,
so
yeah.
in some ways, it's up to what is the mayor and the board comfortable with, right? And so consultation with the mayor could involve the mayor's input on what the hiring process should look like, as well as what the individual recommendation itself, in part because, if there's a recommendation, the mayor may have questions about or thoughts about how that recommendation was reached. So I don't have any particular knowledge about what's been going on, but that's how I would interpret it, is essentially.
So does the again, this is kind of background for me maybe, but does the administration want to give input on the hiring process now? Because I'm not really clear on what maybe Katie was saying about their vision of a process.
It's a good question. I mean, to me, my takeaway is that you all have the ability to drive and define process. But I think it's more to take input in the more like we all need to work together sense and try and answer some of these questions. So I think you all could say our process is it could look from anything like we're going through your uni system. And I know you all are like, no, we don't want to, there are reasons you wouldn't want to follow that process. It could be like, we ourselves are gonna, put this out for 2 weeks on the ACE Fund website and we'll like send it out in a couple emails. We'll interview some folks. It could be like, here is the person we want to hire. I think we just need clarity and enough time that the mayor can, in good faith, be a part of that. So understand how you all are thinking about it, how you got to that recommendation, that version of your process, and then have time built in to be consulted. So this is less to prescribe what your process is. I think we have thoughts on like good process, or how do you just, again, add that sort of like legitimacy to what we're all doing. But that's not to say, I don't think we can say, do this process exactly like this. That's up to you all. But I think we do need clarity into what that is, how it's happening, and time for the mayor to be part of it.
We haven't posted the job description
Doesn't have
yet.
to be.
It was at like this classification stage, right?
It doesn't,
Yeah.
That's what
to my understanding, the job description does not have to be posted. It could be appointed.
Yeah, and as long as,
Well, I want to make sure that folks online, if you had any questions or thoughts, and then I will kind of chime in with some of the things since I've been talking to Katie, what I may want to recommend.
I don't have anything. I'm just kind of tracking the conversation.
Thanks.
Same for me.
Okay.
Just a quick follow-up. So when you say having enough time, I mean, I believe in partnership. Obviously, that's why we're all here. And that's, I think, why Trevor reached out and we worked with Nolan, like in the job description, all of the phases. Jesse and Trevor and I make up the hiring committee. So we had some preliminary discussions. So when you say like a reasonable amount of time, I mean, how much time does the administration need to consider this further, consider a hiring decision, recommendation?
It's a good question. I think it would be really helpful to, if and as you all have a sense of how you're defining, however you're defining process, and if you have a recommendation, I think talking at that point, I guess I don't have full clarity on what will be like discussed or decided at this meeting. It feels like if something was decided at this meeting that hasn't given, the one part I feel clear about is like, if there's like, if what the mayor will need to input at some point after this meeting, after a decision is made. I guess my takeaway from this is that it might just be valuable to let you all take this conversation, discuss your ideas about process and recommendation, and to have a follow-up conversation about, okay, great, given all of that, how and when does the mayor plug into that in a way that meets the consultation definition?
Jessica?
So this far, how have we decided the process will work for hiring the ED? Made a committee and then they've drafted a description. Yep, and then had to be classified.
Yeah, so a lot has come out of this. One, I think the big piece is as we've been thinking about this, we should be finding a way to document it, create our procedure and agree on it as a board. So it's documented for future and we have a process. And all procedures, there can be caveats to it, like and again, the board, then it comes back to the board to deviate from that if there's a reason for it. So I think that's really important, as well as that way that procedure and process can also be given to the administration to look at to make sure that we're kind of in sync and it really sets that platform. So that's one, and this is always like what comes, we're always working here because it's that first year, the chicken and egg, right? That concept. And sometimes we're doing both. So with that, and I think my initial outreach, which I'll be sharing here in a moment, has triggered this conversation, which is the right and good conversation in the sense of timing and process and everything. So it makes sense. So that's one of the pieces. And I think we need to document that because where we've been was we created a committee, which would be part of the process. It's create and or review the job description before you put it out. Any classifications and salary, making sure all that's done. There would be a process of putting it out and for how long we may recommend. How is the interviews done? And what we would want to hear from the administration is actually, how do you want to be involved? Like, do we want to make sure on the interviewing team is the municipality's representative? So that would be Nolan. I don't actually see the mayor sitting in on the interviews, although they're welcome to. Or they assign, like, do we present it to the mayor and then they assign, which would probably go to Nolan? Or they could choose, and we will figure out that language. But hearing that feedback from the administration, again, this is me just talking this through. In that, would we make our recommendation? Here's the one person we want. We've interviewed 5 people. Or would we want, and does the mayor want the top 3 or all 5? And our notes and rating, like what does that look like? And I don't have that answer, but that's part of what we would, maybe we can create and what we think is fair, give it to the administration to give us feedback on going, yeah, that makes sense. So it's a part of our process and it's documented. That's where I think we need to create. And then we'll also be talking about where we're currently at with this process. And what we do need from the administration, which I know Katie and them are discussing and shared, is also because we really can't interview or even look at this position. Because if I was applying, is it with the mayor's office? Who am I reporting to? Sometimes that determines, do I apply or not? If I'm over at the health department or I'm like, oh, they've got me over at land use. Yeah, I don't want the job because I can just see that so not fitting. That's going to create a lot of problems. Not that it would be, but again, I think we internally have some questions that need to be answered to make sure that when we're at a stage of putting this out or seeking that where we have those answers.
So the job does not report to the board.
The position?
Yeah.
No, the position reports to us, but they still interface. I can tell you that, and this is where it gets interesting, is they report to us. And I'm thinking if I was chief of staff of Katie and they're going to be interaction and there's some inappropriate interaction, Katie's going to need to probably consult with the chair and going, we've got a problem with your ED and this is what's going on, and figuring out how do we, because that's where it gets a little wonky. And we would probably need to consult with HR and figure out what do we need to do? Is it corrective action? Is it up to firing? What does that process look like? It's a little different than if they just report it together, yeah.
And then there's some nitty gritty back-end things for us in terms of like PTO like our kind of back-end
Yeah.
systems for
Yeah.
HR things where that needs to flow up to someone and then that person holds that information and some of those approvals. So the manager of that, where that position lives, and then the board and the board chair do.
Because I don't see the chair approving PTOs. That's,
Trevor's like.
I can do it. I do it on a regular basis, but I'm just thinking, and these are some of those nuances that I really appreciate. I don't think we were just, I will say I was very focused on getting somebody into this role because we just need that support. And I appreciate, because Katie hasn't been in this room and she's in back here going, wait a minute. And those are some of the questions that need to be figured out, which we really want to be figured out before we hire, which I will then say, which I want to put on the table as the administration's here, is this is probably going to delay the hiring process, which means we really need to have a conversation of support, which means Austin's contract and making sure that's all in place and ready for delays, making sure that if we don't get into timeline, that we don't find ourselves without support, or worse yet, ever asking Austin to do work without a contract. So we want to make sure.
Talked a little bit about probably having to extend her contract due to the hiring. What do you think, Amy, is the timeline now?
I don't know. That's a great question. We have to figure that out.
So you mentioned delay. I mean, I guess I'm still not clear on, are we waiting for the mayor to get back to us on recommendations for the process? Or, I mean, we had wanted to move forward as expeditiously as possible, given that we're supposed to be working on prepping the benefit recommendation and everything. But I guess, can that be clarified? Or sorry, Jen, says something.
I think that what we're waiting on is to figure out essentially which department this ED will fall under. Is that correct? Like, as far as,
Who's the manager?
yeah, like which under the org chart, right? So that way we can move forward with our policy and procedure in hiring.
And it also sounds like if the position is still with classification, the way our system works, just for, sounds like you know, or maybe know, you have to create the position, you have to have the position description, you have to create a spot for it to live in the internal system that manages employees. And it sounds like that is still in progress. That
My knowledge, Nolan would be the best one to.
somebody cannot go into that position until it exists. So there's that. It sounds like that you wouldn't be able to hire somebody tomorrow anyway and have them be a municipal employee in our system. And I'd say we all suffer, we are all at the mercy of HR and IT on these things. So it sounds like that needs to happen. And then what I heard, I think Trevor suggest and Katie suggest is this board can kind of figure out what its process would look like and then share that with the mayor's office for feedback while that classification, position description, figuring out,
Okay,
where it lives.
I think that's right. Yeah.
so the classification was part of, right? The classification was already written in, yes?
Yeah, there was like a second, yeah, I think that's in the ordinance or
Yeah.
something, but I
So
think there's a second half of
We
what
can
HR
get
is doing.
the job description, classification, the salary, DOE, yada, yada, give that to HR so that they can create that. Right? And in my organization, that takes about 10 to 14 days, sometimes longer. And is that true with the CUNY as well? Or would you say longer? Because I guess the reason I'm asking that is because Austin's contract right now is currently through April, May-ish. What did Nolan say? April. And to get it extended was going to be a feat.
So I guess what I'm taking, I mean, I think the big crux of what HR needs is this final where the position lives
Mhm.
question to be answered. And
Okay.
then that triggers what is probably not an overnight process, but what I can bring back or send to you before the next meeting is a realistic timeline of that position existing on our end. And I think what you were saying, Eva, is that position for us needs to exist before someone can fill it. That's a related but slightly separate question from just kind of giving you all information to think about and develop your like preferred hiring process, how you want to go about that, what, if anything, you want to put in writing. And so that could go through and be posted through the muni. My understanding is it doesn't have to be. And so I think this is largely to just give you all information. And then the more we have clarity on what is the process out of your conversation as a board, that will
So
be helpful.
somebody can't be hired into the position before it's created, but could the process of finding the person start? Even if it didn't exist, we know it's going to exist.
Well, I think if we're putting it out, a good job description indicates who they report to. Reports to the board.
The board, but for like nuanced little things like your timesheet.
Hopefully, depending on the timeline, I would think that we should be able to do outreach and start collecting resumes and looking at that process. Yes. I would think that we could do that in conjunction as waiting for, when can you get us your timeline, Katie? And
That's a good question
Timeline.
too.
I try to ask the good ones.
What day is it? Thursday? Give myself what will feel like a tight timeline, but I think end of week we'll get information. So by end of day tomorrow, we'll try and have a sketch of steps and timeline for the position to exist.
And I think that's goes to the hiring committee, which is the three of us. And we utilize that, but I think there's greater conversation in the sense of the bigger picture of hiring, but also there's a conversation that I wanted to bring to the board of a potential. And so, again, I'm working with the chicken and the egg, which seems to be the story of my life.
Yeah, earlier, I think this had already been submitted to HR, I thought, right? And they said,
Now it's,
yeah, Nolan, I think gave the impression that at times it could take up to a month, but then that would have ended up in mid-February. So I thought we would be hearing back from them to confirm some of those HR details.
Nolan is back next week as well.
He's back next week. It's moving. And I think where my understanding of where it's stuck is the same place as this conversation is stuck of just who does that person roll up to
Okay.
in our org chart? And so I think that's the part I need to go back, or we need to go back and make a recommendation, get that part to HR. And then, so HR has the job description, has it, it's in classification, like it's in the system and it's hung up with a couple of these. It has to go somewhere, questions that,
Okay,
so I'll come back with more on that.
all right.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you all.
Any other questions or conversation that you want to have with the administration in the room? Otherwise, I do know they have full schedules and we'll thank them.
Was there part of it that we needed to talk about, potential conflicts and how we proceed? As Jessica will be on there.
I'm staying.
I just wanted to make sure.
Thank you for reminding, yes.
This is your designated attorney.
Always good to have one.
All right,
Thank you all
thank
very
you for your time,
Yeah.
Katie.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
You're trying to work.
Okay.
Yeah, and lunch is available. It's a little messy sandwich today. That's why I have,
Thanks, Joey.
you can
Thank
eat your
you.
sandwich with a fork and a knife. And there's also some hand wipes there, so. Thank you. And I'm hungry.
Let's just do a 5-minute break. We've been going for about an hour and a half. So people online, sorry, no food for you, but please take a break.
I'm gonna send you a picture.
I can actually, I can actually ask for food. Is it okay if I eat chocolate?
Yeah.
Always.
Like I should ask the board.
Yes.
Yeah,
always.
there's always, yeah,
Yes,
because
I always encourage staff. to
there's
eat.
people who get, yeah, always encourage.
And if there's
That is-
leftover,
that-
even the audience gets to eat. He doesn't allow anybody to starve. Are these all the same?
No, there's Italian sub, chicken parm sub, meatball sub, gyro, and chili steak.
Okay.
I just tried, yeah.
Oh, my wife is dropping off a prescription.
No.
Oh, okay. And pick
Walk
what
with me
you,
to the washroom though.
I'm gonna be right back.
okay,
I'm gonna
pick your, yeah. That's what I picked.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so great.
Oh, shoot, we can keep that open, sorry. Don't want people to not come back.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll prop it open again. You want everyone to come back. Oh, I guess we're done early.
Where is your office?
I work, like my day job, I work for Alaska Center for Resource Families. It's over
Grab your lunch before.
9th and K. Euro. Philly cheesesteak. Euro sounds good. What do you do?
My long-time job is a flight attendant with Alaska Airlines.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Always want to do that, but I have little kids.
You know, I came in when my kids were, gosh, so she was about 17, and then 14, and then 11. So it's a process in talking to my husband and the kids. You're busy doing a lot of other stuff, and then you really want to do what you wanted to do. But then they said, yes, Mom, go.
Are you able to fly standby wherever, whenever? Yeah. That's the benefit. I have a couple of Alaska Airlines cards.
Boy.
I have 4 kids right now, so. 9, 6, 4, and 2.
My husband and we go out to the base, and they have the little Arctic oasis where little kids can play, and then mom or dad can work out, blah, blah, blah. Actually, I saw that he was all chicken and chewy. It's just adorable. A lot of work. I say it's the hardest job I've ever had. Amazing.
A lot of work, but a lot of reward.
Just wait till they get there.
Oh. Thanks for lunch.
You're welcome, yeah. I tried to spread the love with restaurants of who delivers. If they want you to eat, this is from Milano's on 36th. You know, there's not a lot who's ready to deliver by 11. I don't want to keep feeding you sweet caribou, although they're always good. I don't know.
Who wrote that in the chat?
I think Austin. Right, yeah. Sounds good. Help yourselves to food if you want. All right. Can I see cameras on so I know you're back, at least the board? Thank you, Kevin. Mildred, are you back? Thank you, Austin. Thank you, Mildred. All right. This is one of the advantages of coming in person. We feed you, so there's a tantalization to come in person if you can. Thank you for the break. We're back in, so for the record. We're still on the fund, the executive director position. What I'm going to suggest, there's two things, I guess, I want to do. One is I'm going to suggest that the hiring committee and entertain a motion, request the hiring committee to develop a hiring process for a procedural and get that. That it will be something we can incorporate, anything that Katie gets us, the timing and so forth, any other information that can then get to the administration for their feedback and making sure that consultation is being captured of what they were hoping and that we were, and that way we have it laid out. I think that's really good practice that we have a procedure. So if anybody asks us how we've done it, we can show also for future. There's some good things.
So I'll make the motion that we go into executive session.
Oh, we don't need that yet for
Or-
executive
yeah,
session.
sorry.
Thank you. That's my second thing.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking for a motion to request that the hiring committee draft the hiring process documentation. Entertaining a motion? Thank you, Jesse. Motions for that. We have that on record. Second?
I second.
Thank you. Thank you. And Austin gave me the language of any objections?
Trevor,
Yes, ma'am.
sorry. Jesse moved and who seconded?
Georgina.
Thanks, Georgina. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you always as you're grabbing those minutes. Any objections? Hearing none, it passes unanimous. Second is, I want to be able to have a conversation, executive session about a specific potential candidate. I'm going to leave it at that, but before we do that, I'm going to ask our supportive attorney here, Jesse, to go through and just explain what and how we can go into executive session. I think it's good for us to review, and then we'll look at a motion. So over to you.
Okay, so this is Assistant Municipal Attorney Jessica Willoughby. I'm just going to go through some of the foundational rules and laws about executive session. Bear with me, it's a little dry. But pursuant to English Municipal Code 405-100, a board or commission may recess to meet in executive session to discuss 3 different matters. First, matters the immediate knowledge of which would adversely affect the finances of the government unit. Second, subjects that tend to prejudice the reputation or character of any person, provided the person may request a public discussion. Or third, matters which by law, municipal charter or ordinance are required to be confidential. Some of the rules for the body to keep in mind as we move into executive session include the following. First, no action may be taken by the board or commission during executive session. You'll find that in AMC 405-100, no matter shall be voted upon during an executive session. And then the following are rules that Robert's Rules guides us, since there's no procedure specific to this board in code. First, any discussion which occurs at the executive session should only be discussed by the body in future executive sessions. The idea if you start a conversation, that conversation may only be continued within an executive session. Any member who needs to leave during this session may leave, but only may be updated on discussions in a subsequent executive session. Special invitees, employees, and staff members that the body determines are necessary to the conversation may remain in the meeting during executive session. Those are Robert's Rules, section 9, 25 through 27. The Ethics Code tells us that no public servant shall use, disclose, or release confidential or non-public information gained through the person's municipal position unless authorized by law or order of court. A violation such as this may be referred to the Board of Ethics. Code provides that the Ethics Board may make recommendations for corrective action. Past recommended corrective actions have included financial penalties and other professional consequences. Additionally, the municipality may pursue a civil action against an official where the release of confidential information adversely affects the outcome of litigation or negotiations or leads to increased financial liability. Again, may not be relevant today, but it's part of my script. Such a disclosure could also subject a member of this body to removal for breach of the public trust pursuant to AMC 405-065. Violation of municipal confidentiality obligations could meet the criteria for removal. The code does not specifically provide for collection and destruction of notes taken at executive session. It has been past municipal practice to collect and destroy any transitory notes to ensure confidentiality of discussions in executive session. If you would like me to collect and destroy notes, I'm happy to do so. If you elect to take notes and retain them, I remind you that these notes are confidential and failure to properly preserve their confidentiality could implicate the same consequences I've already set out. And that is my foundation.
Great. I believe there's going to be a motion.
I'll make the motion that we enter executive session for the purpose listed in that paragraph B related to prejudice and reputation of a person. And with the topic for this executive session being consideration of a potential candidate for executive director.
Great. Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great. Do you have that, Austin? So we mark the date, the time that we go into executive session. So we will go in. I will ask, do we have a room for?
I created the channel with the help of IT, so let's see if it
Okay.
works. And Jessica, I have a question on recording.
Right, and no objections?
No objections. Thank you. Sorry. Nope.
That's for you.
Great. Thank you.
So I'm going to end this.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
Marie, per code, there's no requirement for this conversation to be recorded. That
Exactly.
requirement is applicable to the assembly. So I will leave it to the board's discretion as to whether they want this meeting recorded.
Not recorded.
Good. So for the people online, I'm going to end this session and we'll send everyone a code for the other channel that is private. So Austin, are you attending this one? There was a question
No,
earlier.
it will
Okay.
just be board members. All
Okay.
staff and visitors will be asked to leave.
Okey doke, so,
Hey,
yeah.
Marie, can I ask a
Yeah.
couple questions?
Sure.
Who second? Khalil moved?
Oh,
Did
sorry.
someone second?
Jesse,
Jesse.
Jesse, okay, great, thanks. And then I think I heard you say maybe exit here. I would recommend that you, if it's okay, if you leave the meeting open, this meeting, not the executive session meeting open, so that
Okay.
if members of the public or me or anyone else who's here, when you come back, we'll all still be here. Otherwise, you're gonna lose people. We're not gonna know when you're
Right,
done.
okay. And I'll just stop recording now.
Perfect.
Okay. And we'll see if the other